Commissioners, this work session, for Tuesday, June 20th, 2023. Seated to my left is Ms. Kim Ellis. Seated to my right is Mr. Moyers with the Law Department. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Lundy.
Here.
Commissioner Derrick.
Here.
Commissioner Oster. Commissioner Ward. Commissioner Schoonmaker.
Here.
Commissioner Hill. Commissioner Lee. Commissioner Beegler.
Here.
Commissioner Daly. Commissioner Jay. Commissioner Frazier. All 11 members are present.
We do have a quorum. Commissioner Beeler, will you lead us in tonight's pledge, please?
Well, Madam Chair, please stand and salute our nation's flag and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, tonight we have two additions, item number 8, and then resolution 23-6-907. That is the one regarding the mental health court. Deferrals, items 3, 30, 31, and 56. Withdrawals, item number 23. And non-consent, items 1 and 2, 4, 6 through 10, 25, 27, and 50 through 53. I will repeat non-consent, items 1, 2, 4, 6 through 10, 25, 27, and 50 through 53.
Could you please repeat the deferrals?
3, 30, 31, and 56.
30 is deferred again.
Yes.
30, and then...
And 31, and
36.
56. 56.
56.
All deferred to July.
Thank you.
Commissioner Daly.
Yes, Madam Chair. Number 5, presentations. They are here tonight to do the presentation.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Motion to set the agenda.
Motion to set the agenda as amended by Commissioner Jay with a second by Commissioner Beeler. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Madam Clerk, will you please read our first item? Yeah.
It's Resolution R-23-6-101, honoring the members of the East Tennessee Veterans Honor Guard for the recent state cemetery evaluation score of 98, the highest in the state of Tennessee.
Is there a motion on this item?
Motion to move forward with no recommendation.
Second.
Motion to move forward with no recommendation by Commissioner Frazier with a second by Commissioner Daly. Commissioner Daly, your light is on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Frazier, did you do this? I believe this is for the East Tennessee Veterans Cemetery only, correct? Yeah, the Lions View will probably, or Lions Bend will come up sooner, but this is for the East Tennessee Veterans Cemetery on Johnsonville Highway.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item number 2, Resolution R-23-6-102 is to honor the career and retirement of Ronnie Chandler from Project Grad.
Motion to move forward without recommendation.
Second.
Motion to move forward with no recommendation by Commissioner Jay with a second by Commissioner Frazier. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item number 4, Resolution R-23-6-104 is recognized in July as Parks and Recreation Month in Knox County.
I'll make a motion to move forward with no recommendation. Motion to move forward with no recommendation by Commissioner Durrett with a second by Commissioner Schoonmaker. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Madam Clerk.
Presentation from County Technical Assistance Service, CTAS, regarding the Knox County Fire and Rescue Evaluation Update.
Thank you. Good evening,
Madam Chair.
Good evening.
Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Kevin Lauer.
Yes,
Did
sir.
I get it right?
You got it?
Yay! Some of those simple names are sometimes I really mess up. So Kevin is with CTAS, did a CTAS study that was requested by, and you can introduce your gentleman to your right. The Fire and Rescue Committee, we've done a lot of discussions on, the value of the fire and rescue, what we need, what do we need in the future, what type of apparatuses that we need. Are they new? Are they old? And then coverage with population exploding in Gibbs and Corrington and Hardin Valley. We need to look at that. So, and the presentation, I was fortunate enough to see it already, and it blew me away. So hopefully, after you all see this, commissioners, you'll take time to look at your section of town and see what's really happening there. So, Mr. Kevin, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for your service on the Fire and Rescue Committee. I know it's been time-consuming. That's been a very positive thing that the county has instituted over the last couple of years, and everybody's there able to talk through the challenges that they have together. And from my perspective, I could see that there's positive steps in the right direction. I do want to thank Director Seymour here. He's came along in the middle of this process, and that's been another very positive addition that the county's stepped forward to help with the coordination and also to help be that subject matter expertise in-house that will help you to make good decisions as you're managing the growth and the challenges that do come with population changes. So back in April, I did a presentation to the Fire and Rescue Committee. This is a condensed version of that, so it's not going to be the entire length of that. I think each of you have the packet or the copy of that in your packet, so there may be some stuff in here that sparks your interest, and you can go in and look at that and get a little bit more down in the weeds. So the scope of the project, as requested by the committee, was basically sort of a refresh of the previous presentation that was done back in 2019. And obviously, on top of the fact that we've had population explosions here in Knox County and a few other areas of the state, lots changed since 2019. And this was just an opportunity to see, hey, where are we at? What is the impacts, as you were saying? So some of the focus areas are the calls for service and incident data. So there's some pretty extensive charts broken down by each fire station and district. So the fire stations that are in your communities, you'll be able to look at those specifically to see about coverage areas, response times, type of calls, those type of things. Also looking at the apparatus, and just back on the service and incident data, we looked at about 21,000 calls in that 1-year service period, took that, geolocated all of that information. I believe there was additional data that was provided, but some of those were duplicates where you had multiple departments responding together. Some of the highlights of that, the busiest stations, and it's been this way for a while, but Carnes is definitely on the rise, but Station 30 in Halls, 41 in Farragut, there on Campbell Station Road are the two busiest, and then the Carnes District 1 is right behind them with that. And that definitely goes in line with the growth that we'll show you here. As far as apparatus goes, there have been some changes, some positive changes, additions in the time period from 2019. which did affect some of the average age of the apparatus. The challenges with fire apparatus is that they're getting much more expensive, and they're also a significantly delayed timeline to get them from specifications to on the ground and running. It's about 36 to 48 months to get a fire truck now, a new fire truck built, and that also increases about 8% of the cost per year. So when you look at the average ages, and you'll see that in the study there, kind of add 4 years on top of that. So if there are changes that the departments need to make, they're already 4 years behind the 8 ball pretty much, and significantly the cost just continues to increase significantly. The service coverage area, we broke that down very extensively, so there's several pages dedicated to that. A very positive thing for here in Knox County, and all the departments should be commended for this about where they've placed their fire stations, is that there is about 95.6% of the buildings in the county are within 5 driving miles of a fire station. And that's very few places in the state have that, and especially for an area as concentrated as this, and also as challenging as the response district is with, as you'll see on the map here in just a second. The significance of the 5 driving miles has to do with the ISO and insurance ratings. So anything over 5 driving miles is considered a Class 10, regardless of how good your fire department ISO ratings are. And Knox County, they have very good ISO ratings. So you have a 3, a 4, and a 5, I think, which from a residential perspective is there's very little differences between that. And then the stations and response times. So we looked at 24, I think there's 24 stations in the county. 10 of those are 25 years or older. There's a breakdown, there's a chart in the study as well, and it shows Rural Metro, Carnes, and Seymour's. As you'll see, most Rural Metro stations are leased facilities, and that will, over time, will factor into decisions, I think, that would need to be made. The study area does include Farragut, and the reason for that is, as you all know, they don't provide their own emergency services, so it was easier just to include them in the looking at this as a whole, as opposed to signaling them out with Knoxville, which has its own fire department and emergency services. So this map here shows you the districts for each station. It's a little complicated when you're looking at, well, whose department is what. As you see on the southeast side there, you have Seymour, and Seymour has 2 stations inside Knox County, and for the purpose of the study, we just combined those into one response area. They also have an additional, I think, 5 stations in Blount and Sevier County that come into Knox County to help, and vice versa. The stations here go over there to help as well. Carnes has 4 stations, and we combine those into 2 districts. And the reason for that is that you have 2 stations that are staffed 24 hours a day, and then they have two stations that are just house apparatus. There's no ability to staff those stations, so it was easier to combine those to looking at that. And then all the rest of the stations and the districts up there are Rural Metro's response districts. If anybody has any questions as we go along, please feel free to ask. So this next map here is using the GIS tools that we have and placing all the business and houses in the models. This is basically a heat map of showing where your concentration of buildings are. And as you can see, the transportation corridors west, much more concentrated, as you all know. So none of this is really any groundbreaking information for you, but it does show those densities of that. A very positive thing is that where the fire stations have been located are, for the most part, really within those concentrated areas. So what that does is that helps response times, because where the concentrations of the development is typically where the concentrations of incidents are, and we found that to be true. So one thing that we look at when we're looking at where are you at is where you've been. And so taking permit data for residential and commercial and remodel and stuff and plotting that, and then breaking that out by fire station. So as you see here, both of the Carnes stations have a pretty high peak as far as construction goes. You also Halls, which is Station 30, is coming in there second for 2021, and then Farragut with 41 and 42, those as well. So all areas did have growth. Some of those were pretty exponential, and from when you're looking at it at a percentage of increase from 2010 to 2020, some of the impacts are pretty significant. Here's a breakdown by district of the populations. And the interesting thing about Knox County is, and I know that I had looked at this a few years ago, and this may or may not still be true, but I think Knox County has the highest population percentage outside the city of the major city limits than any other county in the state. So if it's not still true, it's definitely the very high up there. But typically, most other places in the state have very little commercial outside the city limits, and the percentages of population are typically within incorporated areas. So as you see here, the total study area increased by 14.2% over 10 years. And that's a significant amount, especially when you're looking at the baseline of 252,000 in 2010. Carnes grew quite a bit, so about a third increase in the size and density of that. And as you drive through there, or at least as I have here lately, trying to avoid some traffic on the interstate, I'm just I'm pretty amazed by all the growth, both the density and as well as the size. So that kind of led into, and this was done independently, but I believe that the planning did an advanced Knox study recently that did show the impacts of the growth. Some of the facts from that is Knox County is in the top 5% in the country for growth as far as its population size. Growth impacts emergency services. So whether you're looking at fire, rescue, EMS, law enforcement, it all impacts emergency services. And emergency services are also one of those quality of life measures that sometimes they're kind of hard to quantify, but those are things that people are looking at when they're bringing in development and businesses, as well as just feeling safe in their communities. So with that in mind, it's definitely important for the commission to be looking at that public safety, emergency services side of the growth as these plans come down the pike and are looked at. I told you this was the Cliff Notes version of what we got back in April. So some of the major recommendations in that, and training facilities is a challenge. One, from a cost to build training facilities, but also to make it relevant for the departments to be prepared. The number of fires, generally speaking, across the country are decreasing. When I and this young man got on the job many moons ago, and we actually worked on a truck together a time or two, and we had a lot of fires. And so while we had great, we did training program obviously, but there was that continual amount of fires that were going on that you were helping to kind of hone your skills and stuff. Now fire departments have to spend an extensive amount of time to recreate those opportunities that you just don't see every single day, because if it's your house that's on fire or your family's house that's on fire, they've got to be ready all the time. And so training is a very huge thing. Fire departments are also becoming more of an all hazards agency, and that occurrence has been happening over the last couple of decades. But they do everything. So from obviously fire response to emergency medical responses, hazardous materials, rescue, they have to have the ability to develop those skills as well as to maintain those. So training facilities is something that I had mentioned back in the previous study. And it's a challenge because as you see the geography of the county, what a big area that is, the best case scenario is something more centrally located, or the second best scenario would be maybe two smaller facilities in different areas so that you're not drawing from one extreme, because it takes a while to get from one end of the county to the other, and to take those units out of service for that amount of time. Fire stations and equipment, that's something that I see as a big need. Not only the fact that you have aging facilities that are here, very few are actually owned, and then also those that are here lack what we consider the same standards when building new facilities. So as a public safety facility as a whole, you're looking at hardened facilities, something that's going to endure that severe storm that comes along, that's able to operate when the power's out for 2 or 3 or 4 days or longer, and have more resilience. And so as the growth occurs, as the demands from an incident side increase, the 5-mile standard is probably going to be decreased because of, just like in the city, you have stations that are closer together because of population and call volume and stuff. So that is something that the county can look into, in my opinion, as far as investing in public safety. And it's not just from a fire safety perspective, but these facilities can be used by all the emergency services. One thing that I've recommended across the state and several counties are doing is kind of having all hazard substations where you have fire apparatus and quarters for EMS, as well as rescue and even emergency management with other specialized tools and equipment. A lot of them are also putting in a small police precinct, so the sheriff's office can come by there and they do their reports. They can get on, if they're having issues with their internet in their car, they can get in there. They can use the facilities. They can take just a little bit of a decompression break and still be right there in that community. The advantages of that are obviously we're not building different things in the same area for services that are related to each other, but also it gives you that investment of knowing that no matter what, the county owns that piece of property and they own that facility, and if things change in the future, then you've got some infrastructure that's in place. And then the last one, as far as the coordination goes on there, is the bullet point, is that the next step in moving forward with fire protection in the county is for the county to consider lost my words here. Basically, enacting the Knox County Fire Rescue Department, and that's allowed by statute 517-101. And what that does is that that can mean several different things. And what I would foresee for Knox County is that that's that umbrella organization that is invested in providing services to the citizens and visitors of the county. The existing departments can still remain, and I would encourage that. But you could also at that time start entering into more performance-based contracts, to where that way there's some checks and balances in the services that are being delivered, but also allows the county to kind of step in, and where you have private departments in the state, they're not always eligible for some of the other opportunities and grants and other stuff, and the county can step in of, hey, this is a functional arm by contract of the county, and be able to help support some of those additional opportunities that come along. That's it in a nutshell. There is some more, obviously, in the report. It does go into more details, but hopefully I wrote it in a way that you can zone in and hone in on your areas if you have more interest in that.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Schoonmaker? Commissioner.
Thank you. By the way, I did have my report from 2019, and I see you went from 57 pages up to about the same amount. But My question is, looking at the apparatus chart, and for instance, rural metro, it's my understanding with the movement to electric vehicles that a typical internal combustion engine car fire requires about 500 gallons of water to put it out. And I understand with a pure electric vehicle, it could be in upwards of about 5,000 gallons. But yet none of the apparatus can hold that kind of quantity. So in a electric vehicle fire, you're going to have to send multiple equipment as opposed to one on an internal combustion engine. So in your recommendations, did you suggest that with the implementation of more electric cars, that they need to look at different kinds of equipment to hold more water to handle those needs?
So I did not get into the electric vehicle, but you're absolutely right as far as that goes. It will take, if you're using the apparatus that they have now, a significant amount of those to be able to deliver the initial water, as well as probably go back and get more water to bring to that. In the past, a house fire could be put out with well under 5,000 gallons of water. Actually, ISO has a much lower threshold for that initial response. So those are things that, as technology changes and as your impacts of the community do change, that's a, I hate to give him a plug, but that's a perfect example of why you have a public safety director that is looking at that granular level of that and making those recommendations. But your facts are spot on, so good job on your research on that one.
Commissioner Jay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation, for the update. I also looked through the other recommendation, was it 2019, that we started the conversation, then it quickly died about, what does Knox County do as it continues to grow? Are you aware of any other county in the state of Tennessee or a neighboring state that has, grew to our size and essentially went from a service in which we don't pay for, but we contract, that's private sector, and converted into a public sector as recommended, where we contracted and began paying for services directly?
So the model here is very unique, with Rural Metro being your majority provider, and how that grew out of the smaller volunteer departments from, as in the 2019 study, we kind of walked through that progression there. In the state, not only here in the Knox County area, I live in Murfreesboro, and it's exploding as well, and all the area around Nashville is, and those counties are really struggling with some of the same stuff that you are. And while they have invested by donation, just similar to what Knox County has with giving Carnes and Seymour and the Rescue Squad a donation over the last couple of years, they're looking at, okay, our public is kind of demanding a higher level of service, and we also want to have more control over that. So several of them have gone to a more they're into the fire business themselves, and even more so than what this recommendation is. And not saying necessarily forcefully taking over, but definitely encouraging the consolidation of departments. Most counties have anywhere from 5 to 10, 12 volunteer departments. So a benefit that you have here in Knox County is that you only have 3 departments, so it is easier to coordinate.
But are you aware of one that a county that's actually made the switch? I know everybody's talking about this, but is one can you say here is a comparable size county and they went from now we're not paying $1 and working with private entity partners to saying we're going to take this on and start spending taxpayer money and convert to this system?
Yeah, Rutherford County is one.
Okay.
And that's where I live. So it's gone through the transition.
And how's that gone? How long has that been, and how has it gone?
They passed the Rutherford County Fire Rescue in 2010. That was 3 of the original departments became that, and then they did the contract with the other volunteer departments, and then over time, the departments have just 1 or 2 at a time have come in. I think there's still 2 or 3 volunteer departments that are left, that are independent, but they're on a contract with the county. And so they get a certain amount of money. The county supplies their apparatus, their air packs, their turnout gear. So they're getting a lot of that. Williamson County is similar as well, that they still are mostly in the volunteer, but they've consolidated down to 2 or 3 volunteer departments, and they provide stations, apparatus, all of the hard cost. So the departments themselves, maybe uniforms and some some just specific things that they want.
How has that worked with, right now we have a private entity that is spending their own capital, even though they may get financial support from us, to put in Station 30 in Halls, right? They own that. They own the property.
Sure.
They own the land. They own the building. They own the other equipment.
Right.
Would they continue? If Knox County were to contract, would they continue to own all those assets or would Knox County be in the business of
Well, that would depend
asset
upon
management as well and
how your
taking all
contract.
those?
Yeah, it depends upon how your contract would go. The way that I would foresee that is that as things are now, they would maintain that. But there's a few of their stations that are in need of either movement or replacement based upon the conditions that they're there. And those would be what I would suggest looking at as maybe the first investment that the county has in helping to put a hard facility that the county owns, enter into a cooperative agreement with them to operate it. And that could be one of those $1 a year things or whatever the case may be. And that way the county would start having some investment in infrastructure, but they would still be responsible for most of that.
And Commissioner Daly, maybe you can help me with this. Is the committee taking this and actively trying to figure out how does it apply to Knox County and beginning to make recommendations? Because we did go through this in 2019. We had a great discussion. Everyone said this is wonderful, and then as soon as anybody said it's going to cost $1, they all went nope, and we stuck it on a shelf, and here we are 4 years later. Is the goal of redoing this today to then spark a plan for what do we do in the future, or is this going to sit on a shelf for 4 more years and we'll revisit then?
Great question. Mr. Van de Beek, come on down if you would. I don't think the studies to see what we need and where we're at. Is there legs under it to go forward? I don't see it at this time. Mr. Van de Beek was our chair for 2 years. And do we need some action? I like the idea of the county owning the building or owning the apparatus and contracting it out. It's easier for the volunteer fire department. So, Mr. Van de Beek, I'll let you follow up.
Thank you, Commissioner Daly and Commissioner Jay. Thank you for some good and thought-provoking questions. We're pretty deep into what our various options might be, but we always want to come back to our starting place, which is if it isn't broken, don't fix it. So if you think about fire protection from the standpoint just operationally of our lives being lost, is property being lost, are there issues of underperformance, then the answer to that is no. We have 3 highly performing fire agencies in Knox County, Carnes, which is subscription-based and a nonprofit, Rural Metro, which is subscription-based and a for-profit, and Seymour, which is primarily a volunteer agency. So it's a bit complicated, but it's working, and it's working pretty well. We think it can work better. One of the things that we think we should do as a county is over time provide more investment and more support in these agencies, but not necessarily insource them. There's no need. They're functioning well. And work our way into a place where we have a framework that, as Mr. Lauer said, allows us to have performance-based contracts where we can both set expectations that we have of the agencies, and the agencies can come to us and say, here are our expectations of you. And right now that relationship just sort of exists in the ether. So a great starting place is this creation of a fire department, as Mr. Lauer recommended, which is fundamentally just a structure that creates a department and a chief, and that chief would have the ability to execute contracts with the agencies, and those contracts can set these kind of standards, whether they're NFPA standards or whatever they might be, and expectations that the two parties have of each other. That is the model that the town of Farragut uses. The town of Farragut actually has a contract with the rural metro. Knox County does not. So I think our initial step would be just to try to formalize the framework and put contracts in place that let the agencies continue to do the good work that they do, but give us an opportunity to support them. It is particularly challenging with rural metro. We cannot, nor should we, buy assets for a private for-profit corporation that are going to be owned by that corporation. On the other hand, that corporation is providing vitally needed service to the majority of our citizens. So is it a reasonable thing, as Commissioner Daly alluded to, if we were to build fire stations and they would operate those stations on our behalf? We could do that with any of these agencies. Certainly we could do it with Carnes. It would make sense there. It would make sense with rural metro. But the county would be the property owner and the agency would provide the service. So I don't know if that helps, but that's just sort of an early overview of where we see this going.
It does. I mean, we've created a new position that we didn't have before. So we're creating a new level of bureaucracy to begin heading in some direction. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a new director and we wouldn't spend all this time, because if it was broken, if it wasn't broken, we didn't need to fix it. We'd just keep on moving along. We wouldn't have a new director, right?
Well, could we substitute accountability for bureaucracy? Because that's really where we're trying to go with this,
Sure.
is to define this relationship.
I'll give you that. But this is, I continue to wonder, I've always struggled on how do we reconcile taking taxpayer dollars every year into the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to support agencies for-profit and nonprofit and volunteer, yet we're taking the taxpayer dollars from somebody and saying, you still need to be a subscriber, but we're going to take some more money out of the other pocket and give it to the people that you're already subscribing it to and subsidize them. Like we kind of have our foot in both sides of the aisle here, and we at some point we need to pick a side. We have a volunteer entity on the south side that yet can't staff itself, so we have this second group, for-profit, staffing the thing. We have a rescue squad that also can't staff itself financially, and so you have the for-profit funding. I mean, this is the biggest, most complicated thing instead of something, and we're continuing to, I believe, double tax the people of Knox County for services that they may or may not use until they definitely need to use it. And so it's not, we're kind of a half-baked cookie all the time, and I just wonder, are we going to pick a direction and start working towards that to say every citizen of Knox County should, as part of their governmental services, have fire and emergency services protection, and then here's how we do it? Or are we going to say, you can have it or not have it, or we might pick it up, or you might get a bill, or you might show up? I mean, that's kind of, where are we going? That's what I'm struggling with a new director and a new study that tells us the same thing that we knew 4 years ago.
But just for a little bit of context, what I would say is we might have our toes in the water financially, but our contribution across the board to the agencies is solidly under $1 million a year. Our peers in Chattanooga, I believe, nudge closer to 8 figures. They put substantial amounts of money into fire and emergency services. So we don't cover anybody's operational costs for the most part. We support, on a very limited basis, Carnes and Seymour. Really don't support rural metro at all, again, because the complexities there are deep. And we do support the squad. But each of these agencies pay their own personnel costs, they pay their own operational costs. And one of the things we have to be careful of is we don't want to create the impression, frankly, that the public thinks, well, now Knox County is paying for fire protection, so I'm going to drop my rural metro subscription. Now, that's the worst possible thing that could happen. So we try to be very clear that we might want to assist with facilities, we might want to assist with rolling stock, but the cost of the fireman that's coming to your house is going to be paid by you as a subscriber. Subscriptions are tough. Mine is about $700 a year, but it's a little bit like my life insurance. At the end of the year, I go, man, I didn't collect on it. It's actually a good thing, right? So that's how I view my $700 a year to rural metro, the same way I view my life insurance. It's a necessary expense, but I'm actually glad that I didn't capitalize on it.
Commissioner Ward?
I feel similarly to Commissioner Jay. I think it, the private industry usually does better than public, 99% of the time, I think. And they're already taking over some of the nonprofit and volunteer sections. I don't see why we just let them operate those areas as well, since they seem to be doing a good job. I also don't understand why we are hiring more bureaucrats as well, or whatever language you want to use. I get if you want to support in some way. I think structuring that would look differently in my head. You want to build a fire station, that's fine. You can lease it to the for-profit company. You want to lease it at a little bit lower rate, fine, but at least the taxpayer retains the assets as ours, and we make money on leasing it to a for-profit company. Now, you don't need to screw them on the rent since they are providing a service to the area, but something like that I'd be more palatable for me at least. But I don't, you're not giving for-profit companies, assets and things like that. But I would like to see it stay as private as possible and have us continue spending as least amount of money as possible from a taxpayer standpoint and the least amount of bureaucrats as possible as well. But that's my personal opinion.
We don't disagree, Commissioner. We would like to maintain the structure that we have now. We think the agencies do a good job. We do think it's incumbent upon the executive branch to do some contingency planning. I don't anticipate that this would ever happen, but for instance, I'll pick on, Carnes is an example to start with. Carnes is a 501c3 run by a nonprofit board of directors. Should the board of directors run into a moment of profound disagreement and dissolve, or just decide they can't do anything and they're not going to collect subscription dollars and they're not going to run the agencies and all the firefighters quit, 40 some odd thousand people are going to look to the mayor and say, what are you doing about my fire protection? Same thing with rural metro. Should somebody at AMR, who is their owner, one day decide, we have 8 fire agencies across the country. That is not our core business. We have 30,000 employees, but this is not our core business. We're going to pull out. 200,000 people are going to look to the mayor and say, what are you going to do? We actually do a little bit of contingency planning along that line. That's one of the reasons, for instance, on some of the lease stations, there is a right of first refusal for Knox County to pick that lease up should we have a sudden and unexpected need for a fire station. Again, I don't think it'll ever happen, but contingency planning is part of our responsibility in order to maintain public safety. Again, one of the reasons that we felt like it's necessary to have a public safety director. And let me just say, fire protection is not free, and it never has been. Now, if you're one of the folks that don't subscribe, you don't pay for it, that is your prerogative, but the bulk of it is being paid for by folks that do subscribe. But it is not and has never been free. So the question is, what does it look like? Our model is working. I think it works pretty well. We just think it can work better, and we do think some accountability is in order. Most of these relationships, Commissioner Ward, have a contract. We don't have a contract with Rural Metro, and we cannot without developing a countywide fire department. So if you ask me about the problems with contract with Rural Metro, there are none because no such agreement exists. We think that for an agency that provides fire protection to 200,000 of our citizens, we need some formal written agreement. That's true with Carnes and Seymour as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to express that I agree with Commissioner Jay and Commissioner Ward of being good stewards of tax dollars. We just went through the budget where every dollar is important and how we spend it. You said we spend less than $1 million. That's still a lot of money, whether it be $1 short of $1 million or, 100,000. I just wanted to express that, that we are very conscious and don't spend more than where we need to, and we spend tax dollars where it's the most needed for our citizens.
Absolutely. And just, again, for a little bit of context, I think our peers in the city spend on the order of $38 million a year on fire protection.
Any more questions from Commission? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Van de Veen.
Oh, Madam Chair, could I just mention that Mr. Lauer is a dear friend. His contract with CTAS actually ended a couple months ago, and he just saw this through of his own time and energy and dedication to the profession, and we really, really appreciate that, both myself on behalf of the mayor's office and Mr. Daly and I on behalf of Fire and Technical Rescue. When his contract ended, he could have told us thank you and handed us the incomplete report, but he chose not to do that, saw it through, and we really appreciate that.
Yep, thank you. This brings us to public forum. Per our rules, those who have signed up to speak on an agenda item may speak at this time. We have one person, Mr. Adam Thompson. If you would please approach the podium. You have, state your name and address. Mr. Thompson. I don't see Mr. Thompson. Okay, that concludes our public forum. We'll move on to our next item, please, Madam Clerk.
It's approval of minutes of the previous meeting.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Hill with a second by Commissioner Jay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Madam Clerk?
Drives and roads, consideration of the acceptance of new county roads. A is Checkerboard Lane, located in Langley Business Park, District 3. B is Westland Creek Boulevard. C is Sandtrap Lane. D, English Hill Lane. E, Chip Shot Lane. They're all located in Westland Creek, District 4.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Ward with a second by Commissioner Oster. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries.
Consideration of the closure of Parsonage Lane off West Dickford Lane on first reading.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Daly with a second by Commissioner Jay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Madam Clerk?
Consideration of a closure of an unbuilt portion of Old Tazewell Pike from near Pebble Brook Condos to Murphy Road in Commission District 8 on first reading.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Beeler with a second by Commissioner Frazier. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Madam Clerk?
Line item transfers, total amount of $195,904.34.
Motion to move forward without recommendation.
Second.
Motion to move forward with no recommendation by Commissioner Jay with a second by Commissioner Schoonmaker. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Madam Clerk?
Budget amendments, total credit amount of $2,460.98.
Motion to move forward without recommendation.
Second.
Motion to move forward with no recommendation by Commissioner Jay with a second by Commissioner Schoonmaker. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Madam Clerk?
Spread of record travel of the Tennessee County Services Association, TCSA 2023 Spring Legislative Conference. And then okay. This is Resolution R-23-6-110. It's reappointing Carmel Henson, District 2 seat, and Michelle Hollenhead, District 5 seat, and appointing Valerie Knight, District 1 seat. And I have the name of Kylie Narebny, District 8 seat, to the Knox County Library Advisory Board. Terms expire July 1st, 2026.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Schoonmaker with a second by Commissioner Beeler. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next item, please.
Resolution R-23-6-112. is confirming the Knox County Mayor's nomination of, I have the name Katie Overton for appointment to the Knox County Planning Commission. Term expires June 30th, 2027.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
What was the name again?
Katie Overton.
Katie Overton.
Second. Commissioner Daly, second. Motion to approve by Commissioner Ward with a second by Commissioner Daly. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries.
Resolution R-23-6-804 is waiving the non-assignment provision of Knox County's lease agreement with the Nexus Group Incorporated, doing business as Digital Crossing Networks, and acknowledging and consenting to the assignment and assumption of lease and all associated documents by the Nexus Group Incorporated, doing business as Digital Crossing Networks to Peace Communications LLC.
Motion to move forward with no recommendation.
Motion to move forward with no recommendation by Commissioner Schoonmaker with a second by Commissioner Jay. Commissioner Schoonmaker, you're recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Caldwell? These are the folks that are in the county-owned Summer Place building. So what's the deal? Is this some kind of name change, or is this?
This one results from, I think they're selling out to this other company. So it's an assignment of the contract. And so, instead of going through TVA, of course, which they did before, they have to go through us, and so this is why this is before you.
Okay, so but it's the same folks that's still renting or leasing the space from us.
I'll confirm this with Jane before next week. I think it's a new group. I think they were bought out, but I'll confirm that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, the motion on the floor is to move forward with no recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Madam Clerk, next item.
Resolution R-23-6-901 is a resolution in support of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians as the tribe petitions the federal government to restore the name Kuali in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park.
Motion to move forward with no recommendation.
Motion to move forward with no recommendation by Commissioner Schoonmaker with a second by Commissioner Lee. Commissioner Lee?
Yes, I would, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to be added to this.
Likewise.
Same.
Same.
Full commission?
No. I have some questions first. That's why it's no recommendation. So
One moment, please.
thank you. So can the sponsors of the resolutions, what's the basis of this?
Yes, just a second. I'm writing down all the names that were added. I just wanted to make sure that it was everybody except for Commissioner Schoonmaker. Is that correct? I don't want to add anybody that doesn't want to be on here. Okay. The purpose of this is to simply support the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in their efforts to have the name restored that it was originally before it was renamed to Clingman's Dome. And I have Miss Levita Hill, who represents the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, on via Zoom right now. Miss Hill, can you hear us?
Good evening. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. Any questions that you have, I'm happy to answer.
Commissioner Schoonmaker, do you have a question for Ms. Hill?
Well, I guess, yeah, several. Okay, first off, it's my understanding that Klingman's Dome was named for a Democrat U.S. Senator back in 1858. So 165 years ago, that's how Klingman's Dome arrived by its name. Is that correct?
So, since time immemorial, it has been named Kewohee. There are plenty of historical maps that show the historical name as Kewohee, but you are correct that it was renamed in 1858 after Thomas Klingman, who was a North Carolina senator.
Okay. And then Blount County, Tennessee, who adjoins the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, has not participated in this process.
So to date, in Tennessee, we do have the Smoky Mountains Hiking Club, the Oak Ridge Infinite for Continued Learning, Oracle, and the Sierra Club of Tennessee, but Knox County would be the first county commission to lend its support to our cause.
Okay, and then the Tennessee House of Representatives has not taken up this issue, and also my understanding that the Tennessee Senate has not addressed this issue either. Is that correct?
No, that is incorrect. The Tennessee state legislature has issued their support.
They have they've had a joint resolution?
Yes, supporting our efforts to restore the name of Kewohee. They do have a joint resolution that has been ratified and signed by the governor.
Okay, and then previously, before you came on, there was a picture of Klingman's Dome, which is recognized throughout not only the United States, but the world. So how, for tourists and those things, what will they identify the observation platform as?
Our intention is not to, this is not about the observation tower. The mountain itself is Kewohee, and that is the original name of the mountain. However, the U.S. Board on Geographic Names or the park names the tower, that's going to be completely up to them.
Is that part of this process?
The process is to restore the mountain's name.
Okay, but in our resolution, we don't, we say the mountain, but we don't, there's no reference to say not what is recognized throughout the world as Klingman's Dome, the observation tower, which is probably, and that's the highest point in the state of Tennessee.
I think that it will be up to maybe the park or the U.S. board to see whether or not the Klingman's Dome observation tower remains the observation tower name. But for today, the intention is to support the restoration of the name Kewohee to the mountain.
Okay. So, all right. Okay. Thank you.
I think ultimately the idea is that when the name is restored to Kewohee, that the observation tower could possibly be renamed as well.
But do you understand from a economic development and tourism standpoint, when you have something that's known worldwide as Klingman's Dome, and then to change it to something else, it just doesn't seem right. But
hey, I understand that. We do feel though that this is an educational opportunity to not only talk about the indigenous people who once occupied the land and whose cultural history this is truly about. It is an economic opportunity. People love the idea of learning more about indigenous people, visiting indigenous people. A lot of people have ancestors that are Native American. There's great economic opportunity with the name change,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Okay, and then did you say that the Friends of the Smokies have endorsed this?
In North Carolina, yes.
There's two different divisions?
There's a North Carolina and a Tennessee, yes.
So the North Carolina ones endorsed it, but the mountains in Tennessee, and they have not endorsed it.
We have not asked the Friends of the Smokies in Tennessee for their endorsement. This has been a process, and like just scheduling, getting to all of these places has taken a little bit more time than we thought, but we do have many of the North Carolina counties, county commissions. We have Andrews and Murphy. We have a joint venture with all of the counties in surrounding Cherokee on the North Carolina side. Again, coming to the Knox County Commission is one of our first stops on the Tennessee side.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Oster?
Ms. Hill, thank you so much for being here, and for the commissioners who have signed on to the resolution. Since we do have you here, I think it's important if you can do it kind of in a little synopsis of what this land actually means to the Cherokees, and why you guys feel like it is so important to be able to get this name back. And it's a great history lesson. Before you do that really quick, because I don't want to forget this. Right now, we've got over 3,000 Native Americans that live in our region, with nearly half of those are in Knox County. So I think Tennessee and Knox County is a great opportunity to be able to start, and then to know that our legislature has signed on also. But I just wanted to be able to get that on the record. But if you want to take a minute and just kind of explain that to the commission, I think it would be great.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that opportunity. This began for me in July of last year, and it came after the renaming of Mount Doan in Yellowstone National Park. Mount Doan has been changed to First Peoples Mountain, and for us, for Native Americans, it was truly a celebration for our brothers and sisters, because it was an opportunity for those Native Americans to have something back. It began the process of what can we do here in Cherokee, North Carolina. As you may be aware, the Cherokees once owned and occupied parts of 7 states. The mountain itself, which is Kewohi, or the Mulberry Place, the Mulberry Place was a sacred mountain to our Cherokee people. This is where our medicine men would go to pray, to seek guidance. Also, the community went there to get the mulberries, because that's where they grew. The mulberries were used for food and for medicine. Ultimately, though, at the end, or in the 1830s, during the Trail of Tears, the Indian Removal Act, whenever a lot of our ancestors were forced from their homes and moved out west by foot, my ancestors, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, a lot of them remained in the mountains, hidden within the caves, trying to survive simply so that we can stay here. This is our home, and part of that home was Kewohi. There are trails there from where our great ancestor Solly hid in the mountain to hide, or to stay to not be arrested after his wife was killed. And there's trails that go down to the Bryson City area. And this is just super culturally significant to me, to my relatives, to my ancestors, because this is how we are still here in North Carolina. Otherwise, we would have been moved out west to Oklahoma as well. So thank you. That's really why we're after the name change, because it is one of the most historically sacred places in our culture.
Thank you, Ms. Hill.
Thank you.
Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Did you say that you are working with the national park, or you have not worked with the national park?
So we have friends and connections with the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, and they are promoting education, and they do refer to Clingman's Dome as Kawohe because they want to be sensitive to Cherokee. They now have Kawohe days. They invite schools up to go to the mountain. They allow traditional practices to happen there, but it's all orchestrated through the park system themselves. And so we are working with them, but they, and then a few weeks ago, they allowed Cherokee to partner with Yo-Yo Ma and have a performance there. So the Park Service is helping with educational opportunities.
Now, the Park Service who does the application? The Park Service?
No, in this instance, we're a member of the Eastern Band, and my friend / sister, Mary Crow, we're going to do the application ourselves. It's 2 people. We're going to submit an application to the U.S. Board on Geographic Names, and then they will determine, approve or deny our application.
Is the mountain the mountain itself named Clingman's Mountain?
Clingman, the whole mountain is actually named Clingman's Dome. It's confusing though because the observation tower is there on the top of the mountain. So we're not asking rename that structure. We're asking restore the historical, cultural name Kawohe to the mountain.
Is this the only mountain, or are you going to go after Mount LeConte next, or which mountains is the next on the list?
So I don't have a list. I know that there are places that maybe other people have in mind, but I don't have a list. This is my goal. This is something that I've worked very hard on for 8 months, and I will continue to work on. So this is it for me.
I don't understand why the Park Service is not behind you. Why is not the Park Service behind you?
Because they just don't take an official stance on these things. If the U.S. Board on Geographic Names says we approve this application, we're going to name it, and then they'll do the work from there. But I don't think they're going to take a stance to support or oppose.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lundy.
Ms. Hill, I just want to say thank you for your work. I know your efforts are not easy of reclaiming the land. I think that's why it's so important for people to know the true history. We are living in a time that, certain states want to deny people's history and keep people from knowing it. So this is a great economic and community development opportunity for people to know who had the land first. Continue to do your work. I am praying for you and standing with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Hill, I also want to thank you. I know looking at me, you couldn't tell, but my My maternal grandfather is of Cherokee descent, and I actually had a small business that was named Ioka, which in the Cherokee Native language means she brought happiness. So I'm thrilled to sign on to this, and I wish you well in your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schoonmaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure who you're talking to off to your side there, but I do try to do my homework before a meeting, and there is a House joint resolution, but it's still in the subcommittee of the Natural Resources and Agricultural Committee. So the House of Representatives and the Tennessee Senate have not, according to the information I've been looking at, have not, followed through on the sponsoring of changing the name for Klingman's Dome. So you may want to ask your colleague to your right, if they've got the information, to please send that to us. But the Tennessee General Assembly says it's still in committee and hasn't moved since February of this year.
So the person to my right is actually my husband, and I don't know if you can see him. Sorry. I apologize. We are actually out of town. We're in Kansas currently, but we're out here for the World Series, and we'll be watching Tennessee later tonight. So he does a lot of the work with me. He does all the traveling to anywhere that we go for talks, for educational purposes, for anything. But he, we have a picture, and I have the actual document in my office that has all the approvals on it. I'm happy to forward a copy of that. I do have a picture of it on like my Facebook account with Mary Crow. Representative Justin Jones did mail that to us, so we have the fully signed thing, a document. But the document number, what was the document number? HR, you said? The document number is 452. But I am more than happy to email a copy of that. I can send
That'd
it
be
to
great.
Courtney because I do have her email address, and then she could share.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. That would be appreciated.
Okay.
Commissioners, I also want to add that since we are the first stop, we are the only county commission that has taken this up. However, we are not the only ones that will be considering it. For example, County Commission in Campbell County will be bringing it next month. One of their commissioners will be bringing it next month. A very similar resolution, if not the same, with just name changes as far as which commission is adopting it. So that will be going forward in July in Campbell County. And again, this is not, as Ms. Hill has said, this is not the first mountain that has been renamed or restored back to its original name. Previously, Denali was Mount McKinley, and now it is Denali in Denali National Park. And so this is not something out of the ordinary. This is just a restoration of that prior history. And so all this does is just say we support their efforts. Whether or not they get it, that's up to the U.S. Geological Board in naming. So that's all this is. Is there any more discussion regarding this item? Seeing none, the motion on the floor is to move forward with no recommendation by Commissioner Schoonmaker, with a second by Commissioner Lee. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Ms. Hill, thank you so much, and go Vols.
Go Vols. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. One question.
Yes.
This is the work session, so next week is your actual council meeting, correct?
Correct.
Should I be there for that? I'm happy to attend. And then Chief Sneed was going to attend your session tonight, but then I gave him the pause. But we could both be there next week.
I will be in touch, but if you could, that would be wonderful.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye. All right, next item, Madam Clerk. Oh, that's right, thank you. Commissioners, Jane Bird is here with PBA. We're going to go back to 50 so she can explain what the difference is, Commissioner Schoonmaker, to hopefully answer your question regarding that item.
Hello. Good evening. I'm Jane Burrett with the Public Building Authority, 400 West Main Street, Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm sorry, we had a PBA board meeting, so I couldn't be here earlier. But this assignment of an assumption of the lease is specific to Nexus. Nexus is a networking group. They have servers and things in the Summer Place facility. So if you're using their system, we badge you so that you can come in and check should your server go down and something like that. They are selling to a group called Peace Communication, LLC. They're out of Chattanooga. And I sent Chris and Charlie the financial statements from them, and we did a study on them, and they seem like a good, solid company. So this is just a transfer of the current lease. It will be up in 2025, and we can look at any renewals or changes at that point in time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item, Madam Clerk.
Item number 52, Resolution 902, regarding the intent to adopt a commercial property assessed clean energy and resilience CPACER program with Knox County to be administered by the Knox County trustee and provide for a public hearing to be held on July 24th, 2023 at 4:30 p.m. in the main assembly room of the City County Building.
Is there a motion on this item?
Motion to move forward with no recommendation?
Second.
Motion to move forward with no recommendation by Commissioner Frazier, with a second by Commissioner Schoonmaker. Commissioner Jay?
Yeah, I just have a question. Is there, what is the requirement? Is there a requirement for having a public hearing? And is that public hearing for us, the commission?
Trustee Biggs? Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. 400 West Main Street, Suite 427, Justin Biggs, Knox County Trustee. Yes, sir, there is by state law, we have to have this is a resolution of intent. We have to have a public forum, and then the actual vote on this resolution will be next month in July.
So the legislative body must have a public hearing per state law?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Commissioner Daly?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Trustee?
Yes, sir.
Explain the program to us and to the public, please.
Thank you. CPACER was enacted in 2021 in the state of Tennessee. It's in 32 other states. We were looking at some of our delinquent properties and some of the properties we previously sold in our tax sales, specifically commercial properties. We were noticing that some of those commercial properties were still blighted. They hadn't been cleaned up. There was still, eyesores to the area, so we got in touch with a group of different people and saw if there was any programs we could do to see what we could move forward with those blighted properties being cleaned up. CPACER got brought to our attention. Memphis as well as Nashville is already on the program here in the state of Tennessee, and we started talking about what it does, the direction it could do. So we were solely based on the blighted property portion of it, and then we saw that there was another component for new construction as well. What CPACER does is it allows banks and the people that are actually going into the property, purchase the property, to take out a separate note so that way they can go in and clean up the property if they take the proper precautions of the financial build options that are intact with CPACER as well. It does say clean energy, but there's a lot of things that would be able to be included in the CPACER program for some of these specific areas. It would really help clean up some of the eyesores that we have now.
Would that include the Smoky Mountain smelter site or Witherspoons or something like that?
Yes, sir. Yeah, as well as some of these gas stations that you see that have been owned by people that may not live here that have become eyesores. Those would be able to be cleaned up under this, and some of the other things maybe out further in the county. This would also be stackable for pilots and TIFs, so hopefully this benefits, and it's another thing that draws to fill up our industrial parks, Midway Road, Carnes Valley, or Hardin Valley, and things of that nature.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Commissioner Schoonmaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Trustee?
Yes, sir.
How are you, sir?
I'm well.
So does your office then classify that commercial business in the CPACER program?
Yes, sir, we would. After the application process is met and the assessments looked at, we would. And then after that, it's administered through us with the bank of choice. We've already met with several banks. If this program's passed in July, we're going to hold a workshop in the small assembly room with the area banks to be able to come and take part and show them knowledge of what the program offers.
Okay. Is there any downside to your office administering this?
Not any that we've seen. I've talked with surrounding trustees. I've actually talked with the trustee in Nashville about them administering it, and we don't see any negative impacts for our office.
And it's worked well since for Davidson County, it's been successful and they've gotten properties back to where they need to be?
They are, well, I'm geared more towards the blighted property at first. They're kind of, Nashville's moving so rapidly, they're definitely utilizing the new construction portion of it. So I'm going to have to talk to other states about the blighted property portion of it before I could give you an honest answer about the blighted portion of it. But one of the things that we like about it is whenever we pulled up the data, just for 2021, the CPACER program did $4 billion across the nation. So that's just for 2021. This has been around since 2009. So
Okay.
we're a little late to the ball game, but we're there.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioners, I just wanted to make a note of clarification that this resolution is a resolution of intent. We will actually vote on the CPACER program in July, but this is to schedule the public hearing. I put it at 4:30, 30 minutes before our July commission meeting, since that is when we will be taking it up. And we did have that 30-minute window open. Is there any objection to that time? Right? With that said, would the maker of the original motion change it to approve rather than no recommendation? Frazier, Commissioner Frazier.
That's good.
Seconds okay with that? Right. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to approve by Commissioner Frazier with a second by Commissioner Schoonmaker. Seeing no more lights, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
We'll see you in July.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Item 53 is Resolution 903. It's approving an extension of the contract with Pugh & Company, P.C., for professional auditing services for the fiscal year 2023 independent audit in the amount of $347,900.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Schoonmaker with a second by Commissioner Commissioner Jay. Commissioner Schoonmaker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Audit Committee approved the extension of the external auditor's contract. And so we're all in favor unanimously of this going forward to the full commission.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion is approved. Madam Clerk, next item.
It is Resolution R-23-6-907 that was added to the agenda. It's approving a grant contract with the State of Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services in an amount not to exceed $236,000 for the continued service of the Knox County Mental Health Court Program for the period beginning July 1st, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024, no local match required.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion to approve by Commissioner Jay with a second by Commissioner Lee. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. We have no one signed up for public forum open topics. That just brings us to discussion of June agenda zoning items and other business. Is anyone who has a zoning, let's see, we have Commission District 8, 7, and 6. Anything anyone wishes to offer? No? No? Commissioner Lee, we good? Okay. There we go. Is there any other business to come before this work session? Commissioner Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a comment on agenda items 60 and 61. Just know that this is currently a mobile home park, and that I had reached out to county staff with some citizens' concerns about relocation. And so if anyone's interested in that, just let me know. We do follow the Uniform Act, which is only required when federal funds are used. And so it will depend on the contractual relationship with the residents and the owner of the property. If in their contract, if it states they must give a 30-day notice to evacuate or relocate, then that's what residents will have to follow. The citizens there are concerned about where they will relocate, but I just wanted to let everybody know that information that I found.
Thank you. Commissioner Schoonmaker?
And that's number 60 in the 6th district and number 61 in the 7th district. Is that what you said?
No, sir, that is, it's 5-A-23 SP, 5-D-23 RZ. It's in District 7.
Okay, excuse me. 61 and 62.
Yes,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
gotcha. Thank you.
Is there any further business to come before this commission? Seeing none, motion to adjourn. We're adjourned.